And ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us on The Voice of Reason. Today is June the 8th, another Thursday edition of The Voice of Reason. My name is Andy Van Beber, and I'm joined by Travis Kirkendall. And your eyes do not deceive you. Down there in the bottom left-hand corner is
Big guest
local
today.
Pike,
Big guest.
big time future presidential candidate Alex Ellison, uh, who is our Pike County prosecuting attorney for his second term. And it's such a difficult position, though. We know how hard he works to get that job, and
Yeah, that election season was pretty rough last year, yeah?
Yeah, I think it's safe to say I owe my reelection to my appearances on The Voice of Reason.
Well, let's not get silly. We'll let that get away. But Sean, I wanted Sean to. Sean is actually less than 30 minutes away from me right now, but his sister, congratulations to Leanne Dugan, who delivered twins yesterday. Very healthy babies, and Sean and Tony are babysitting everybody. So Sean said, I can't do a podcast and have kids running about my feet and everything like that. So, but it gives us the opportunity to invite on the counselor. So, welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm actually really excited because tomorrow, well, Saturday, we will all be together at our friend's wedding. I will be DJing. Travis and Sean will be in the wedding, and we were just informed that Alex will be there. So we're just beyond blessed. So it's going to be a great weekend, and I may have to go get a school bus so I can be a designated driver for like however many people are going to be in that wedding party. But
Someone's got to do it, right?
you're right. And I'll just try to explain that one to the school district, how the taxpayers' dollars will be put to good work and everything. But
It's for a good cause.
yeah. So I will tell you, Travis, today you inspired me, and then I got uninspired really quick. I had to clean out the gutters on my shed. I was up 15 feet in the air. My shed actually sits taller than my house does, and it's at a steeper pitch. And I think I crapped myself a little bit when I was up there, and I'm thinking, my buddy Travis does this every day. But of course, you're also strapped in. You've got like a gazillion straps on you and everything, and you're probably a lot safer than what I was when I did this. So, but I was just like, you can keep that job. There's no way that I want that. I could even handle anything like that. But
Ah, jeez.
so,
It's safer than it looks, I promise.
so say you. Alex, how have you been? Tell us what's going on in the life of the Pike County prosecuting attorney and all that good stuff.
Yeah, it's good. Just got a couple little boys to raise, and in the meantime, when I'm not busy with that, I'm putting bad guys behind bars. So, not too bad.
Yeah. That is fantastic. That is and
You're basically the Batman of Pike County.
there it is. That's it right there. So, and you will also notice something new tonight. Scrolling across the screen, whenever we have people who scroll in and say, "Well, how can I find you guys on?" So you will see all of our where we are located. I didn't actually put everything on there, but we are now officially on TikTok. We are on Facebook. We are on YouTube. Those are the main places. You can also go to Instagram, but Travis is actually the Instagram guru amongst us all. But I am not.
I am not at all.
Every time you send me something, though, it's on Instagram, though.
Well, Instagram's the one I use most, but I would not say I'm a guru at it.
Well, okay, you are correct. I fall.
I can't take that kind of credit. I can't.
Okay. So, and Alex, I actually was thinking of you the other day. I was taking my lunch, and I was scrolling through the channels, and I watched My Cousin Vinny. And
Oh, yes.
have you watched that movie before?
I've watched
It's a great movie.
And I will say this: My evidence professor in law school says it is, and I agree. Now being a trial attorney myself, it is by far the most accurate legal movie ever made.
Shut up. It is not.
Really?
If you're talking about trial procedure, rules of evidence, pre-trial procedure, it is spot on.
Wow.
Yeah, not to mention it's just highly entertaining.
Oh yeah, I love Joe Pesci in that.
I wouldn't have guessed it was that accurate though, like a portrayal of like a trial.
Yes, yes.
That's pretty.
That's so cool.
That's
I'm not kidding.
awesome.
That's exactly how trials go.
Oh my
It makes me
god.
appreciate that movie even more.
Yeah, that I was watching that, and I've watched that. I don't know how many times I've seen that movie, but it's just like, seeing Ralph Macchio in something other than Karate Kid, and then he's in there, and then it's just like how everything was done, and so it was pretty interesting. It was, but every time I watch that movie, I think of I'm just like, well, there you go.
Mhm.
So since we're talking legal issues, let's talk about bring up the title of tonight's show is How to Really Rig a Vote. And I'm sure people who are tuning in are thinking, okay, now wait a minute, is this going to be one of those conspiracy theories and Trump? And no, actually, it's not, because this
We're saving that one for next week.
yes. So we actually this has been a practice that's been going on for years, and this is a practice that is actually called gerrymandering. Gerrymandering, people are like, okay, I know whenever I mention it in my class and everything, kids kind of look at me cross-eyed. Well, that's a weird word. Are you just making that word up? And I'm kind of like, no, that's an actual term. That's it's something that people do. And so what gerrymandering basically is rigging an election, drawing up election districts to to favor a certain party. And usually these districts are drawn up based upon various factors: socioeconomic, racial, and those are the two biggest ones. And the reason why we're mentioning this is that today the Supreme Court ruled on a case called Allen versus Mulligan. And this was a case that basically was brought before the Supreme Court from the state of Alabama. And this was basically how the Republicans were going to redraw after the I don't know if it was after 2022 or after the 2020 election. I couldn't find that. But they had recently redrawn the districts in Alabama in such a way. They were planning on doing it in such a way that was basically going to, how do you want to say, to basically discriminate against African Americans, to where they were going to be divided up and they wouldn't get a fair vote. So Alabama, just for those who wonder, Alabama has traditionally been a red state. And so what's going to happen, is going to, and this is going to send a message to the rest of the states to basically say, okay, you guys this has got to stop. But we'll talk about this case first, and then we'll get it kind of into gerrymandering a little bit more. I'll read a little bit from the case itself. And the first thing I'm going to point out to this is how the decision came down. So right now, if you look at the Supreme Court, we have six Republican nominated judges to the Supreme Court. Chief Justice John Roberts is I don't know if Alex, I don't know if you know too much about him, but I would consider John Roberts more of a moderate than I would a conservative judge. How would you?
Yeah. I mean, he's, at least in legal circles, he's kind of known as conservative leaning, but more than anything, he's not looking to shake up the status quo. So.
Yeah, and so John Roberts, and the one that surprised me was Brett Kavanaugh, who was a Trump appointee. John Roberts and Brett Kavanaugh sided with the three liberal judges on the Supreme Court. I can't think of the anyway, but the Sonia anyway, those guys sided with the 3 liberal judges, and it was a 5-4 split. And so this, like I said, this case was called Allen versus Mulligan. And so when they wrote the majority opinion, one of the things that came out of the majority opinion on this case was, okay, we're going to set up a rule. And this was going to be a message to other states. Okay, so they set up this 3-prong test, and here's how the test is broken down. Number one, before anything, they're going to look at it overall. Is the way you're setting up this voting district, are you setting it up to where it's going to be discriminatory in practice? Okay, so the number one part of this test is you have to show that you have a large group of minorities in that district. Okay, so when you draw up your districts on a congressional map, you have to have a large number of minorities in that district. And again, depending on, how diverse. I mean, in Iowa, it's not going to be an Iowa map. Is not going to be.
Is there a baseline, or is that specific on the district?
I think it's based upon. I think
it's based off the district.
It's after
right?
basically it comes out of what your census numbers. So what your census numbers.
Okay, they go off the census.
So they're going to go off the census numbers, and it's going to be based upon how, how they're going to be drawn up. And then when they say discriminatory, they're going back to the Voting Rights Act of 1968. In Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act of 1968, basically, you're not going to discriminate against black voters. Okay, and so number one, you have to show that you have a large group of a minority in that district. Number two, now this is where it gets this is where we're going to start a discussion at. Number two, that large group votes similarly, and they will base that upon the previous, election numbers. Okay. And then the number 3 thing is there is a white group that also within that district that votes similarly. So right off the top, when you look at these, and Alex, we'll start with you. When you look at these 3, I mean, is this legally feasible, or is this making the problem worse, better? What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of the natural problem with a lot of what the Supreme Court does. And it's just an inherent thing in the Supreme Court system. They kind of just make these rules up. How they get to these rules is they look at a statute, like in this case, the Voting Rights Act, and it gives pretty vague language, and then it's up to them to come up with these tests. And I mean, those of us who went to law school, we see these tests all the time, and they're kind of just pulled out of thin air. And something like this, you really start to think about, if you really want to tackle the issue of gerrymandering, I guess you got to start somewhere with some sort of criteria. But these kind of things, I worry when I see these kind of tests that they can be used in both directions. They can be used to manipulate districts. However you want the end goal to be, they can be used. And that is what worries me.
Well, and Travis, what's your thoughts on this, Travis?
I mean, it seems like he made a good point about what he's worried about with how this can be used and abused. And I mean, we were pulling up articles before this of like, this isn't the first example of this happening. And there's some pretty ridiculous looking maps. If you look at like states that have like gerrymandering, this is nothing new. Mm-hmm. And it's on both sides of the aisle here. Mm-hmm. As far as I read a stat, and I don't know how we get into this, but I read a stat that showed that the percentage of Georgia residents, one article said was 27% African American, one said 31%. So roughly 25%, 20 to 30% of your population is black voters. And to my knowledge, what they're going to do is they're reshaping the districts so that another district that's majority black gets more of a say. Am I on the right path here with that,
Yeah,
B? Or
yep.
because I'm a little confused reading into this myself, and I guess I can see why they would do it if you look at the percentages, but that's what the articles show you.
Hmm.
So I guess I can kind of see as a way of making it fair, but I can also see the issues with it as well.
Well,
And I don't know.
go ahead.
What are your thoughts on, like, do you think that the court made the right decision, yes or no, in shooting this guy?
Oh, there. I can go both ways with this.
Because I'm still a little iffy on how I feel about it. I'd like to hear your take.
Alex, I will get your view on this too. You
Yeah.
kind of already said it there, but um, there is no when you well let me show this graphic I have just to give people a basic idea of how gerrymandering works. When you look at it, those who are listening on Spotify, you just have to look. But this example that I'm using right here, okay, so if you look at so you have 50 precincts. Let's just say you have 50 precincts, okay? 60% are blue, 40% are red, okay? When you divide it up equally like that, okay? So the blue would have the advantage, all right? But I can draw this up to where it would just be 5 districts, okay? 5 blue dominated districts, 0 red dominated districts, blue wins, okay? Then so this third one here then is you have, okay, again 5 districts, okay, 3 red, 2 blue, red wins. All right. So in any situation, I don't think there's no good way to look at drawing a fair election district, unless you're in your Wyoming's, North Dakota's, Iowa, Nebraska, Kansas, predominantly white states, or if you go to, but when you go to these predominantly black states, or not, I should say, there's a larger number of African American in these states. How do you draw a fair district? So now, and as Alex said earlier, when you put this test out there, and there are numbers. I mean, I teach a number of Supreme Court cases in my class, and there's a number of a lot of these cases establish these tests that, as Alex says, it's based upon past cases, case law, stuff like that. And I don't want anybody's vote not to count. And you have to have congressional districts for Congress, so you have the right representation in the House of Representatives. You have to be sure that district is represented fairly. But as a whole, then you say, okay, how do we keep it to where it's going to be fair, that Republicans and Democrats both have a fair chance of winning an election in a certain area? Because this is basically what this comes down to is control of the House. The Senate doesn't matter because it takes the state as a whole. You take your overall votes for whoever. Your presidential election doesn't matter because it's again taken as a who wins the overall. In a state election, you can win by 1 vote or 1 million votes. You still get all the electoral votes for that state. But in a congressional district, having to draw that up to where it's going to be fair, to me, is an impossible task. And when you put these three things are near impossible, I think, to fulfill. I don't know. Alex, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it is really tough. And one thing I think to keep in mind is, if you remember, about the same time Alabama instituted this map that got challenged, Missouri Republicans were having an internal debate about possibly doing the same thing. Currently, we have 8 congressional districts in Missouri, 2 of which are democratically held and represented by actually both black Democrats. and the state Republicans in Missouri were really close to passing a map that would eliminate Emmanuel Cleaver's Kansas City district, combining it with others and diluting the vote enough so that we would have seven Democratic districts in Missouri. And it was really close. And the Republicans at the last second decided that wasn't fair. And you think about it, it's really not fair. I mean, for example, even in a state like Missouri, 40 to probably 45% of our state votes Democratic in a presidential election.
But and what's interesting to note on that though is where are those? I mean, I've looked at the map over and over and over and over again. I mean, it's predominantly Columbia area, St. Louis, and Kansas City.
Yeah, it's your big rural areas.
Yep.
No, urban.
It's
sorry.
your urban, your urban areas. So I mean,
Don't listen to me. I'm not the expert here.
so how do you see how's Missouri? What do you think Missouri's going to do to approach this? How are they going to address this issue? Do you think, since we're Republicanly controlled everything?
I mean, the Republicans, like for example, last fight, the reason we didn't institute a map like Alabama did was because, in my opinion, some of the more mature Republicans realized that, hey, this probably isn't the best thing. It's going to get challenged. We're going to become the center of attention in the nation. We don't want it. So they passed a much more balanced map. But yeah, it's really hard. And I don't know what the answer is. Because right now, most states, we have a system where some type of elected politician or group of politicians are who draw the maps for congressional districts.
Well, let me bring up so I'll bring up, and again, sorry, Travis mentioned this too, so we can look at some of the what's considered to be, so this is from fulcrum.us. These are the 12 worst gerrymandered districts in. This is, as we said, was 20. This was 2020, right, Travis? We said, was it 2020? Yeah.
The one article I found, the one that says the 12 most ridiculous.
Yeah. So
this was a 2020.
So here's how Alabama is drawn up, and I'll see if I can get my arrow over here on the screen. I don't know if it'll show up on. No, it probably won't. But if you look at, okay, so you have these two districts here, the two large districts, which are, they're red districts, okay? But then you have, so when you look at what's called the 7th district of Alabama, and this is why, why the Republicans want to redraw this. It says, so the 7th district, it says the 7th district is living proof that racial gerrymandering is partisan gerrymandering and vice versa. It is a heavily Democratic and gives off several narrow, and you look at this, it fingers off to the south and to the north, okay, including far off Birmingham. Okay, so there's the little finger that reaches up to the north there, includes Birmingham, okay. In the Senate election, the last Senate election, this Democrat Senator Doug Jones won the statewide popular vote by 1.5 percentage points. Yet, the only district he carried was the 7th district, which is 63% African American. Okay, and it says without these contortions, this site says Alabama's 7-member House district delegation quite possibly have a second Democratic and potentially black member in addition to who they already have. And so, and Alabama has a state, basically they have a 25, according to the last, to the 2020 census, has a 25% black population with a 34% Democratic vote in 2020. Okay, so you do that math. That is how how it works in Alabama. And so, was this a knee-jerk reaction? Because of the control in the House, I think so. But the one that I want to really, and this one hits home with, if I can scroll up here to it, is in Chicago. Imagine that, Travis. That
Yeah, I saw that map. That one's. I know
okay.
those neighborhoods.
So
That's interesting.
so this is. Let me bring this one up here. So this is, and for those of you who are watching there, that little blue area there. If you will see how that district runs. Okay, so this is the Illinois 4th District, and it's called, they actually nickname it Sideways Earmuffs, with parts only the width of a city street. So there's parts of this district that are as take up a city block, street wide and narrow. Okay, and so
Very
it's
specific too.
yeah. And so it is, and it's not an automatic district that's just generated. It's a gerrymandered district. The forced unusual shape connects two Hispanic and solidly Democratic communities, combining them.
Big time.
And combining them allows Latinos in the city to have equal opportunity to participate in the political process. Okay, I get that. But after this district was created, its voters elected Luis Gutierrez as the first Hispanic member of Congress from the Midwest. When he retired, 4 years ago, the voter's successor, and who is currently, is Jesus Chuy Garcia. Okay, so what's the biggest challenge here? The biggest challenge is, how do you get equal? And Alex said it perfectly. I mean, what's the solution to this? Because you're never going, in my opinion, you're never going to have a fair shake. I mean, is there, I mean, can you guys, what's your guys' thoughts on this? Is there any true way to say, okay, we're going to divide this straight down the middle? I mean, we're just going to go boom, 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 boom. I mean, what could be the problem? I mean, what kind of issues do you guys see here?
I mean, it's not really a cookie cutter solution, I don't feel like, because like every community, every district, I mean, it's kind of what we already touched on. I mean, you have different races, ethnicities, religions, you name it, right? So how do you even that out? I mean, obviously looking at voting demographics and reshaping that way it gets skewed a little bit. I mean, look at Chicago, and there's I can tell you, I know those neighborhoods, there's a very specific reason 4th District is shaped like a C. It's very specific. So it's a tough one, because I was going to ask you guys what you thought a solution was, because quite frankly, I don't know if you just divided up, let's say if you just picked a state and divided up in like 6 or 8 different pieces, is that still a good representation of the people of those districts? Like,
Alex,
what if it is more of the other, like how does that balance it out?
Alex,
Yeah,
go ahead.
I mean, I think it is something that politicians and government leaders have been struggling with for 250 years now, because you can't just equally divide up a state geographically, because that would hurt people in more condensed populated zones. They wouldn't get the same representation if as somebody in a rural area would. And so you've got to do it by population. And if you're doing it by population, that means you can't just follow traditional county lines or city limits, or say everything north of the Mississippi gets this district. It's got to be by population, and by nature, you're going to have to manipulate those zones just a little bit to make the populations as close as possible. And I actually think maybe the system we have now is probably the best, where you let politicians do it, and if they get too far afoot, somebody can sue and let the Supreme Court step in and slap them down. I think and this might sound silly, but I think as technology progresses, I think utilizing artificial intelligence, you plug into ChatGPT the criteria you want for your state's districts, and you let them figure it out, and they do it in an unbiased way. Now,
Well,
It's probably going to be
That's a fair solution.
But yeah.
when you look at, and I'm right now I'm working on getting the map ready here. I'm gonna, so we're mentioning Missouri. So okay, here we go. So this is Missouri's congressional district map. Okay, district. So you have, when you look at the map. Okay, so currently we live Pike County, where the podcast originates, where I'm headquartered at here anyway. We're District 6. Okay, and it basically, if you go by if you follow it, I mean, there's part of it looks like it follows the Missouri River for part of it, and then it's drawn on county lines. Okay, when you get to the fourth district, and so on and so forth. So the third district, our third district here, is kind of an interesting mix because of the fact you have Cole County. What county is Jefferson City in? Is
that's Cole County?
That's Cole County. So Columbia then is in I guess
Boone.
Yeah, Boone. Okay. So between Cole County goes into one district. The northern half of Boone goes into another district, and it kind of sees out there. But then you look at District 2. District 2 is pretty much western St. Louis and out in that way. And then District 1 is St. Louis City. District 5 is pretty much, and you see how it kind of fingers up there, is Kansas City. So, and then the rest of the state is, divided up how it is. I think our districts are done to, but when you look at all these districts, you look at so the first district right now is our infamous Cori Bush. I'm sure you guys have heard about Cori Bush. She's come up many times, and stuff she said about the president in the past, and she's run her mouth quite a few times, but she's, very democratic. But then you get into what is district number 5, which is Kansas City. Again, like you said, Emmanuel Cleaver, who he was elected back in 2004, I believe it was 2004 was when he was elected, and but again, it's drawn to favor, I think our map is drawn to basically make sure that everybody has an equal voice, because then when you get in these other districts, for our district where we're at, we're in District 6, and that's Sam Graves. Okay, and Sam Graves has been our representative since he was elected back in 2000. And so I kind of agree with you guys that we have to look at, one of the things that we have to view is what is going to give people a fair representation. When you go back to the argument, when you read the Federalist Papers, when you read what James Madison wrote, and James Madison was, give the power to the people as a whole, let them decide how, things are going to work. Who was opposite of him was a guy by the name of James Wilson, who was I think he was from Pennsylvania. And James and his whole thing was, okay, we're going to let the people do it. It needs to be based upon representation. It's got to be, let the people. And he was kind of with Madison, but at the same time, he was more, man, we're just going to do free for all. And so I don't know if there is a true solution to this, but gerrymandering has been as Alex said earlier, is a problem that we've had since the history of the Republic. So I don't know. So, moving on, I guess, do you guys have any other things that you wanted to add to this?
Not really. I kind of want to go back really quick. I really liked, Alex, your idea with the whole AI thing, and we just had a conversation about AI. But I really think that could be a valid solution that would get rid of any like human error or bias or whatever. But on the flip side, I can understand people being a little skeptical too, because like, hey, well, who says the algorithm or AI can't be manipulated to create these districts too? But
Absolutely.
I don't know. I don't know. This is like Andy said, this is a really complicated situation. I don't know what's right or wrong, but I trust that our Supreme Court made the right decision. Um, I would say the fact that uh, a majority conservative uh, um, court ruled this I, against something. A lot of people were surprised by this ruling. So
Well,
something like that.
I two things I want to bring up, and I was watching a comedian this week. Something popped up, and he said, "Well, you've got to believe in some conspiracy theories." He said, are there people out there who actually believe, "Oh, everything is up and up with what the government does. They're totally transparent, and they're not trying to hide anything from us," And so, I mean, you don't have to be the head mechanic at Jiffy Lube to know that there's there's an ulterior motive going on here, you know. But and the second thing I want to point out, we mentioned the Voting Act, the Equal Rights Voting Act, 1968. The last week of school, and I recommend this movie to everybody to watch. Very historically accurate movie. It's called Selma. It was about the the march from Selma to Birmingham, Alabama, done by Martin Luther King. It was 3 attempts, basically because they were basically being kept from voting, and it was basically the back and forth between Martin Luther King Jr. and Lyndon Johnson, the various sheriffs in that state, in those counties in Alabama, and so Alabama has a history of limiting black voters.
And I think that's why this became such a big issue.
Yeah.
And with race being such a heightened topic right now, discussion, I think that kind of just fit the bill.
Well, can you and I mean, obviously we're 3 white guys sitting here talking about this in the Midwest, and we're talking about race issues, but
Yeah.
I really, and this is what flies up in the face of a lot of conservatives, is that, and not, my go to is my 89-year-old father, who lived through the Depression, who lived through the Civil Rights Movement, who thought Dr. King was a rebel rouser. Everywhere Dr. King went, when he left it, there was always a riot. He started riots. And when I wrote my senior research paper on Martin Luther King, and I had to have 3 interviewed sources, and one of them happened to be my father, because my dad was in the military. He was drafted for the Korean War. He never went to Korea, but he was part of the unit that was brought up to Little Rock when they integrated their school system in Little Rock. And my dad said, well, everywhere Dr. King was, there was a riot. And so you have that older half of the conservative generation who will say ignorantly, well, they got their voting rights and they got their civil rights. What more do they want? And to me, racism is still played out in this country, both ways, white versus black versus white. And to me, the greatest challenge we have is looking past the race card. We're never, maybe I'm being too pessimistic about this, but I don't ever believe that we're going to get past the race card. I think that when you look at this gerrymandering situation, people are going to say, well, if you're redrawing the district, you're just redrawing it to favor the white people, which is true. They are. Okay? But at the same time, how else are you going to do it? All right? When you say, okay, well, your police racially profile, which they do. But again, at the same time, white people are committing crimes just as much as black people. So there's an issue there. Do we honestly think, even though we are in the middle of Pike County, Missouri, in Cook County, Chicago. Is do you? I mean, and Travis, you probably see more up your way. I mean, do you still believe that we have a state of racist nation in today or not?
Uh, I've just listened to a podcast kind of talking about this stuff recently. Man, it's hard for me to say that. I mean, growing up, I definitely saw some things that were obviously racist. Um, heard some things that were obviously racist. So obviously it still exists. To what extent or like how is it as big as the news claims it to be? Is it like I don't know. And someone who was raised in the city who is a different ethnicity than me would probably say something very opposite of me because I don't have that experience. I don't know what it was like growing up in that neighborhood. I don't know what it's like dealing with cops and being an African American male at 15 years old. I don't know that. So I can't say that it doesn't exist because there's so many people that have or talk about these issues that like grew up in these neighborhoods and like deal with this kind of stuff. So it's hard for me to kind of deny it because again, I don't have that experience, but I still think the news probably overblows this and it kind of goes into that whole like dividing us, like we've talked about. It's like a big topic we always come back to.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I truly I don't think it's as bad as the news says. I think most people generally look at us like look at each other as humans. I truly do believe that. Maybe I'm way too optimistic, but I find it silly that it's 2023 and race is still a topic of we're talking potentially voting rights issues right now or whatever the case is. It seems like it keeps coming back up, and I don't I just think it's silly. I don't know why it's still a topic of debate.
Alex,
No.
what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely think race is. Do I think America is a racist nation? No. But do I think race is still a factor in a lot of our society, as far as a lot of our societal norms, a lot of our institutions? Of course, it is, and that's because for the first 200 years of our existence, I would say we were a racist nation, and I think that stuff is probably going to take 10 more generations for us to work through, and so I just think it's always going to be something, even on a subconscious level, that plays a part in the decisions our leaders are making, and even on a day to day basis. But I am with Travis on this one. I truly think on a person to person level, um, I would be shocked. I would say it's got to be less than 1/10 of 1% of the population is racist on a face to face, person to person level. Um, I think once you get down to that level, it's much more about truly the content of one's character.
Yeah.
It's really only on these larger issues and where you don't have a face or you don't have a name of a specific person that you're thinking about, that we see these issues. But race is always going to be here. But I really do think that Americans deep down on a personal level are able to put race aside.
Mm-hmm. When you look at the makeup, and I brought up our two areas that we talked about. When I look up at the population makeup of Cook County, Illinois, this was from the 2020 census. This is from census.gov. Cook County, Illinois, 65.2% white, 23.7% black, 0.8% American Indian, and 8.1% Asian. When I look at Pike County, Missouri, here you go, 91.2% white, 6.2% black, 0.3% Native American, 0.4% Asian, which my kids are probably 0.1% of that. So, but no, yeah, I agree with you guys. There's definitely this is definitely an issue that is going to be something that's going to plague us for a while. I think that it's going to be something that has to be addressed. This gerrymandering thing. But one other thing that we want to bring up tonight, and this was an issue that was going to take up a ton of time, but we did want to mention this tonight. And other news today, new news, new news, new news. Biden, this actually was yesterday. Joe Biden vetoed the bill to cancel student debt relief, and this was part of, if you all remember, this was part of the navigation through the whole debt ceiling crisis that we talked about. What was that, Travis? 3 weeks ago, we talked about the whole debt ceiling thing, I believe it was.
Yeah, I think it was 3 weeks
Yeah,
ago. 2
and
weeks.
so this was part of that. Okay, well, we need to consider this, and you actually had what was really unique about this was that you actually had some Democrats who crossed the aisle to support this bill in the House and I think in the Senate as well. And it got to Joe Biden's desk, and he said, "Nope, not going to happen." And it looks like we could see another Supreme Court probably decision come up with this soon. That there's a, you know, that we, that this should be overturned. That we, hey, college kids, pay for your college debt.
So that's what they're going to decide, whether the payments have to be returned or not.
Well, so this is what.
Is that
so,
what's going to come down to?
Well, I think what it right now it's what Joe Biden this again started during COVID. So as I'm reading this, if this legal challenge, if enacted, Biden's plan would forgive up to Biden what he wants to do. What he wants to do would forgive debt up to $20,000 in federal student loan debt for borrowers making less than $125,000 a year. Okay. And as we know, student loans were paused during the COVID-19 pandemic. But on the current schedule that we're looking at right now, I think those will end in, I want to say in August. It's either July or August. I believe that that will, the whatever you want to call it, the moratorium or whatever you want to call it on student debt. And so I don't think it's going to be, hey, you have to pay that money back, but I think it's going to be basically saying enough is enough. We need to move on. And so I'm going to ask the younger guys in the room, since I've paid off my college debt and I'm already biased. So I'm going to ask what your guys' thought is on this.
I'll be quick. I think this is 100% Biden trying to appeal to that demographic voter, like that age group of people, because I think economically it makes absolutely no sense. Like, we're a country in however much trillion we're having debt ceiling meetings right now. I'm trying not to default, so it's like it doesn't make any sense for us to pay that, like us meaning like taxpayers or the government or wherever the money's coming from. I paid my student loans, so it's kind of like, I paid them. Why can't you figure out how to pay them? Like, I went overseas to pay off mine. Like, I don't know, figure it out. Like, I don't know. I don't agree with that, the handout thing. I don't. And I really just think Biden's trying to get voters here.
Alex, what do you think?
Yeah, so I'm going to put on two hats here. First, my taxpayer hat, American citizen hat. Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly with Travis. It makes zero sense economically. I mean, just on a fundamental fairness level, it doesn't seem fair to people that have either already paid their student debt, people that didn't take student debt out, or for people in the future that are going to take student debt out. It doesn't seem fair to just forgive it to the people that have debt outstanding right now. In addition, we simply cannot afford it. I mean, the United States government cannot afford to do that. And it's very clearly a political move. I mean, it is 100% just the Biden administration and the Democrats trying to buy the votes of the younger generation. That is, it's very obviously.
Did you see, Alex? Did you see that thing about Biden's political team or whatever? They were looking to reach out to like influencers on like TikTok and Instagram and try to like connect with them to help promote their message. It's like part of their like campaign strategy, I guess.
No, I
I don't
hadn't
know if
seen.
you I don't know if you saw that. So that was something I read a while back, and then I think it kind of ties into this as like, who is your influencer that's going to be on social media like saying go Biden? Probably your college kid that doesn't want to
Yeah.
pay
Well,
his debts, or I don't know.
let
There's
me
definitely
let
an
me let
incentive
me
there.
play devil's advocate here real quick.
Please do.
All right, so if I am let's say that I majored in um I majored in trying to think of something that I majored in. Okay, I just have a liberal arts degree. I have a liberal arts degree, and
Mhm.
I have, let's say that I have 40. Let's say I have $50,000 worth of debt. I'm in a job that is making. I'll just use Actually, let me just back up a little bit. I'll just go with my own thing. Let's say that since I am a teacher, okay, and Missouri is middle of the list on teacher salaries. We are, I think, 26, 27, somewhere in there on teacher salaries. All right. And based on today's numbers, I take out, I have $60,000 in federally financed loans, but I'm making $55,000 a year. And let's just say that I'm a single teacher. Okay. And I live in Pike County, Missouri, okay, making $52,000 a year. Am I right to say that, man, I could use this leg up, and this can help me? I'll go from the bottom up theory of economics, not trickle down, but bottom up. And when I say, okay, if you forgive my federal debt, then I can start contributing more to the economy by purchasing and committing more to the economy. Is that a bad thing, or is that a wrong approach to take?
No, it's no, you're right. And I said I was going to put on two hats, and my second hat was my hey, it's me, Alex Ellison hat, and because I do still have tens of thousands of dollars in student debt that I've been paying steadily on for the last. I've been out of law school for 8 years, and I've been paying steadily on them. But I still owe a lot of money, and so while I don't think it's the right thing for the nation, hey, if everybody else is getting their student loan for, forgiven, I'm not about to miss that boat either.
For sure, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I want to take advantage of it, and yes, it would be a big help, and it would allow it. It would make it a lot easier to buy a home, or maybe I could invest in something, buy some rental property, and fix it up. There's a lot of things that young people could do with that money. Um, and like I said, on a very personal, selfish level, yes, I would love it if my $45,000 of student debt was forgiven overnight. I would cry and fall on my knees in front of a picture of Joe Biden.
That's a fair point though. That
Oh,
think about like people that say I don't know how much a monthly payment is for some of these student loan bills. I mean, some of these student loans are like another mortgage, or like the
mm-hmm.
equivalent of like two vehicles. That's a lot of money every month. So I wonder, like, yeah, if you were someone who's like 23 years old working a $50,000 a year job, and you are able to clear up a $400 a month payment, I mean, yeah, that's now you add that up, all the other people in that situation, that's a lot of money that could potentially go into the economy, and
So
maybe people can buy houses, or maybe they can,
and the way I look at this, so I was blessed when I went through school to qualify for Pell Grants, because back in the '90s, my dad as a mission pastor, we were making well under poverty line, and I'm not saying this to be braggadocious by any means, but we were well under the poverty line, and a large part of my education was funded through scholarships and Pell Grants. And I walked out. Now again, this is in 1992 through '96 money, but I walked out with about $4,000, 4,500 in loans. I paid that off. It took me 2005, 2006, I believe. And back then, that was at about that was like I remember my payment was like $375 a month, and that was quite a chunk of my check back then. And you, but my father-in-law, before he passed, he was a union pipe fitter, totally different income range. All right, and as a union pipe fitter, he was making cash, and so my wife came out with, I think she ended up having like $23,000 in student loans, and again, 1995, 1996 money. We paid that off the third or fourth year of our marriage, which was about 2009, 2010. Okay, and she graduated in 95. So we 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 paid ours off, and in and I think this is a topic that we need to cover again. I want to. I don't think we've ever approached this topic. We have talked about minimum wage and stuff like that, but I mean, when it comes down to, if you're not in a minimum wage job, you're in a white collar job, or you're in a blue collar union job that makes, I'm not going to say crazy money, but you're making enough to pay your bills. I think part of it is it's personal responsibility, because we're not going to get a bill passed tomorrow that says, "Hey, we're going to forgive all car and truck payments." I made the choice to buy a 2016 Dodge Ram that I'll have paid off in about 3 more years. Okay, I made that decision. I made the decision in 1992 to go to a private institution, Hannibal LaGrange College. I didn't go to a state back in 1992 it was $10,000 a semester. Okay, now, which is, for inflation, you look at what it is today. I made that decision. I went, and basically what I did was I went with who offered me. I applied to a number of different, like you guys. I went to a number of different applied to a number of different universities, and I went with who was going to give me the best deal. And it was Hannibal LaGrange.
Yeah. One interesting statistic I want to share here, and this, like you were talking, this could be a great topic for another episode. Credit card debt in America, 2023. America's total credit card balance is $986 billion in the first quarter of 2023. It's projected to hit $1 trillion this year.
Wow.
America has $1 trillion in credit card debt. So the topic of debt, I think, other than our nation's debt, and how do we handle this issue, I think that'd be a good discussion.
Yeah. I'm with, if you would have came, and I will confess this. I was able to pay off my college debt a lot sooner because I had a car accident, and I could have sued the pants off the lady because she was totally at fault. I settled for her to pay my hospital bill, and I got a $50,000 settlement out of it. And I used that $50,000 settlement to pay off my college debt, and I used it also to get my master's. I paid for my master's degree. I finished my master's degree in 2005, and then what I had left over of that money was put forward to help pay off. I mean, it wasn't a lot left, but I used that to put forward on my wife's college debt. So, it is what it is, and I part of it is, and this is what, quite frankly, pisses a lot of younger kids off when I say this. You have to make the decision. I mean, and this is another difficult topic to address, and I still want to have our panel of seniors on one day, Travis, just to, hey, okay, what do you want to do in college? And there are some people who say, well, I like a couple of years ago, I heard a senior say, I want to go into music therapy. Okay, what does that look like? Well, music therapy, you play music to help people with PTSD and all this other stuff. Okay, how many of those programs are out there? Well, it's still, and so you're wanting to get into something that is highly, I want to go to school to be an underwater basket weaver, like my dad always used to say. I want to do that, but okay, what's the market for that? So do you go with what your dream is, or do you go where the money is? And that's kind of what I think it comes down to, and some of these kids are like, well, I wanted to do this and it didn't turn out as I wanted, so now I need help paying off my debt. And I think that's where a lot of these kids are at. So
I could do 3 hours on this topic we're on now. I love talking that kind of stuff. We gotta come back to that.
yep. So anyway, as always, counselor, it was good having you on this evening. We thank you for your input. One of these days we will get you into the room at the same time when Sean is here.
Yeah.
But but you are. I actually think Saturday Night Live has like their 5-host club. I believe if I checked my records correctly, I believe this is your 5th time being on.
He's been on the most.
Yes, so
I believe.
you are by far a
Thank you, too.
popular.
Thank you for
Thank
that.
you for coming on. We love having you on. We know you're a loyal listener. Martin Hanley's right behind you, so you're in good company. So he's
Yes, very good
and
company.
and Edelman's up there too. So you're in good company. But thank you for joining, being with us tonight. We appreciate your time, and go catch some bad guys for us, and keep the streets of Pike County safe for us.
Yeah, no problem. And I tell you what, I'll make you a special deal, and I'll cut my hourly rate in half for my time tonight. So
yes.
the invoice won't be as large.
Yeah, you've helped me out of so many legal jams already. So anyway, so Travis, anything else you want to say for tonight before we head off the air?
I got nothing. Thank you guys for tuning in.
Yeah.
We'll see you next week.
Definitely, we'll see you guys next time. And keep on telling your friends about us. Check out our reels on Facebook. Look for us on Instagram, YouTube. Please like and subscribe on TikTok. That way we can actually add a live broadcast on TikTok, which is kind of my goal to get to. So look at us, and we'll talk to you all next week. Have a great weekend, and we will see you all next time.
Bye, guys.